Hey everyone, and welcome back to Episode Club. Today we are going to be talking Season 3, Episode 6, The Climb. And joining me, as always, is my trusty YouTube companion and basically Episode Club co-host at this point, Johnny Be Crazy. Hashtag Johnny Be Baelish, hashtag Too Sexy, whatever you want to call him. And I just want to introduce him and let him introduce himself. How are you doing today?
Hashtag thank you for having me on, and I'm doing awesome. Yes, hashtag too sexy. I think the new phrase is nude and spadered. Yeah, that's right. So hashtag nude and spadered. Also, this is a great episode. Honestly, just appreciate you having me on, and to be called a co-host, that is an honor. But no, I will gladly be your dog, play fetch, whatever. Your humble companion, uh, go on vacations. You can put me in a kennel, all that good stuff. But we have the Bear and the Maiden Fair coming up Wednesday, and that's going to be a really awesome one. This is a fantastic episode. The climb, uh, get some cool shots of the wall amongst various uh, spurts of courtly intrigue. So
Mm-hmm.
do love this. I love to ramble too.
I need that first. Um, yeah, this episode is one for the books and one for it's climbing over the hill at this point because this episode probably is around the halfway point or one of the ones at near the halfway point of this entire series. It's a really good one to go over. And we're actually changing things up this week or this time for Episode Club. We're actually going in sequential order, which we haven't done, I think, since about season 1, and that's awesome. So,
I don't even know what we're talking about.
yeah, we're just winging it at this point, and we're just going to talk about it because it's a really, really good episode. And while I figure this picture pack, because we're doing something new with the picture packets, and see. Oh, here. I'll have to crop this even more. Um, but
Yeah, don't you love technology? Boom. They make it really simple.
so the first scene we have here is Gilly and Sam, and they're setting up camp for the night. And Gilly basically teaches Sam how to make a fire. And he talks about dragon glass, the wall, the people at the wall, and Gilly makes Sam sing for him, sing for baby Sam and for herself. But he sings, I guess, something about the seven and the light of the seven. So, what do you think about this really cute scene we have here?
Yeah, this is a really cool scene. It shows how awesome Gilly is and just how capable she is of surviving, how smart she is. She does a lot of things that are what we call, I guess, street smarts. But in this world, it's super functional and it's what you need. And she's pretty quick at it. Even though you can learn and be taught how to make a fire, some people aren't that good at it even after being taught. I believe Sam was taught. He never made one. He never had any interest. I'm sure he's seen people make fires, but now he's busy reading books and other things. Then we have the dragon glass introduced, which I think is major foreshadowing for many things, but for sure for Sam the Slayer to come out and kill the White and save Gilly, which I think is a good adaptation. I don't know what I'm trying to say here for the show, but the books. It was during the Battle of the Fist of the First Men when Sam accidentally killed a White Walker. They all called him Sam the Slayer since then. I do think Sam may be the one to strike the final blow to the Night King. It is a slight tinfoil theory, but I do think it's more. it's very possible in the books. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to ramble here. You go ahead and talk about it, but I do think Gilly will be the Lady of Hornhill slash Sam may get Highgarden, but that's assuming that things are going to stay the way they were before all of this happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can kind of most. Yeah, it's befitting Sam's character if he goes from, what was it, a White Walker to a Then to now the Night King. Like, if he kills, unless it's someone else that we don't know yet, maybe a named character that we already have, and then the Night King. Um, because it's those big steps and those, I guess you could say, things that we're not supposed to believe in, then getting to the Night King, which would be awesome. Yeah, this is a really sweet scene between Gilly Salmon, who will be named Little Sam in the future. It really shows their starting of their relationship, which is a really sweet and kind relationship. We don't really get these grandiose moments with these two characters. Um, and I think, if I'm being honest, they're probably the longest running relationship that we have left in the show. Um, Besides, like, family relationships, like a romantic relationship, I feel like this is the longest one that they've had to date, besides like Jamie and Cersei, but that's just like a
I
more of a,
think you're right, but technically Jamie and Cersei aren't together anymore.
yeah.
And especially in the books when he throws the letter in the fire. Uh, I want to say it's at oh, it's the black Raven Tree. I think is where he throws it in the fire. I'm not could be mistaken. I know that's where Brienne comes and gets him, but
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, they are. They're the way they've come together. They really worked their relationship. They took it slow, except for in the beginning being thrust together in a situation where she did have to run. Um, it is pretty fitting that this be the only relationship that actually works out in season 8, in my opinion. Because if Danny doesn't die, I still think John is going to have issues with many different things regarding his heritage and possibly Danny's decisions. That's assuming Danny doesn't, the foreshadowing for Danny dying um, isn't going to happen. I mean, she could live, but I feel like she's going to lose everything if she does.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like she's going to be stripped away. It's what's happened with her story, her quick rise and fall. I think there's some great poetry in that. But here I am rambling again.
No,
Sasa,
no,
stop
no.
me from rambling.
No, no, it's okay. Yeah, it's a really like it. This scene, um, and the longevity of this relationship that's really just starting to blossom in these early seasons establishes what kind of relationship that they have in the future. Like, pretty from much from this moment, Gilly views Sam as a father figure for her son, who she said multiple times in just the past few episodes that he doesn't have enough time, that there's something that Craft is going to do that's going to, if the mutiny hadn't happened, what would have happened to her and her son? Who knows? So the fact that Sam is risking his Night's Watch house for her must be this huge emotional thing. Um, because yes, they're going to the wall, but what does going to the wall mean at this point? Because at this point they've lost Jeor Mormont, so they're technically Lord Commander less, um, and it takes them a while from this point to about season 5 to pick a Lord Commander. There's ones that are in term, like Alistair Thorne, but it's a huge gamble that Sam's taking by bringing her to the wall, um, especially after losing the Lord Commander. And it's just so funny where when she's like, "You have to," with the fire, with the stuff about the fire. Uh, Sam is just like kind of clueless when you would think it's usually the opposite roles, especially in Westeros about making a fire and such. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it really shows the power of both sexes all throughout this show. And it's that traditional women being oppressed, and you know, lots of great women just aren't going to be held down. And
Yeah.
I just love that theme. In
Yeah.
general, I mean, even anyone who's poor is repressed in this world, so, or cowardly, or looked upon as different, or a bastard. So instead of
So
rambling, we'll get on with it.
yeah, so the next scene that we get, as I try and get to the scene here, and it's that wants to be funny with me, is sorry.
All right, if you
Oh,
want
here
to.
we go. So
Oh, she
now,
just got done punching that rabbit to death.
yeah, so we have the crew, I guess, near the wall, but not beyond the wall, with Mira and Osha, and they basically have a fight. They're having what you could say is almost a sisterly fight, kind of, over who can skin the rabbits faster and better. But Bran has to settle this, and pretty much says that either way works, and all that. And then they talk about like how Osha says that Mira put a knife to her throat. It's a foreshadowing almost for her death in a sense. Knives at the throat. And we also see Jojen having a vision, and he sees, when he wakes out of his vision, he says he sees Jon with a bunch of enemies around him. And this is kind of a interesting scene that these few characters are going through here. What did you think?
I thought the funny banter was well needed right before I guess a seizure type scene with Jojen. I thought it was well put together. Having had a couple of seizures myself, I know how scary it is. But getting to the actual what happened with Jojen and Bran, you see, Bran's the one that has to lead here, has to pull these people together. And you can say Bran may be the last hero. Now, I'd have to count how many companions he ends up having along the way, but if you add the children in, if you add Bloodraven in, it might be a dozen. They all die, except for Mira, who may have something happen in the end. I don't know what happened there. But like I said, I'm crazy. I do see that Jojen's dream definitely well, he prophesizes basically what Jon has to do, overthrowing the mutineers at Craster's Keep. Uh, and it really lets you know after this happens, you have to pay attention to Jojen. In the books, you already know a little bit because he was at Winterfell, and the green dreams are a little more pronounced. You get more of an explanation for what's happening, but here they use this mysticism of not really seeing it. He just gives this ominous fortune, so to speak, and I don't know. I really like it. It was a short scene, but it's really well done, and I think there's a lot there. Yeah.
Yeah, this one, the one telling thing is about like Osha and the knife at her throat, like how that she feels like that's how she could die from Mira. And obviously we know that it's not Mira that ends up killing Osha. It's Ramsay Bolton in season 6. Yeah, in season 6. Um, so imagine like all the way then they knew how she was potentially going to die. Um, yeah, we see Jojen and the fact that Mira's always been there for Jojen, and she always has to be prepared at any moment when her brother's about to have a vision, and making sure that he's okay when he comes out of these visions. It's a sisterly thing, but she's probably known about it pretty much her entire life when this was going on. And yeah, the fact that Jojen, when he wakes up and he's able to speak, he says that when John's surrounded by enemies, when it's kind of, in a sense, almost the other way around, because John's the one that ultimately dupes all of the group of the wildlings that he's with, because in a couple episodes he ends up leaving them. So, and
Could that have been foreshadowing for John's death too?
it's possible he's surrounded by enemies. Yeah, because it's the Night's Watch that ends up being like part of the mutiny. Uh, but it's a possible thought that's going on, because and the fact that Jojen's like Jon Snow is beyond the wall, like they're showing already, seeding the importance of Jon's character, almost maybe with characters like Jojen and such, because as we know, the world doesn't really care about Jon Snow, but it's characters like Jojen and Bran and the Starks that actually um, do care about him, besides his like stepmother in a sense, Catelyn. Uh, but yeah, it's a cool scene, and if we want to move forward, um, it's hold on, my this thing's going crazy.
Oh, we can go ahead and move forward. It's
I'm
all
just trying
good.
to get it to work. There you go. I'll just put it in. Um, for this scene, we see Jon and his enemies, I guess by Jojen, and they arrive near the wall, and Tormund and Orell make pretty much jokes about the wall, and I believe it's Orell make jokes about the wall, and they talk about having to attack the wall and the strategy behind it. And Ygritte also talks about the wall, but there's a couple moments in here where they have Ygritte and Jon have moments alone, and it's kind of funny how she views like their now changed relationship, and Tormund ultimately then, after uh, gives him tips on how to climb the wall, and yeah, because Jon's never done it, it's a thing that he's going to do because he's the crow. Uh, and he said, "Don't let if you fall, don't scream, because you don't want that to be the last thing that she remembers." Among other things that he said. But what did you think about the first of a few climbing scenes that we get?
I I thought it was really fun and funny. Egret I think she broke the nose of the dude to get the shoes for John. A little too big. Um, the Lord's kiss that changed the world right here. Uh, you think without that, Egret would have kept John's secret?
Mm, she likes him,
I'm
so
being facetious.
it's a maybe not. Who knows? Because she does talk about in this, like in the last episode, about the lovers that she had before him, and like how so it's possible, but as we know, their relationship in the book is important, so or relatively important. So who knows? Um,
You
Go ahead.
also see here that Tormund seems to like John, and we see that later in the episode as well. He's giving him advice, not just letting him be. He's actually telling him things he needs to do, even if it is in a crude manner, which we love Tormund for. And yeah, you don't want that to be the last thing for your love to see before you die, is you screaming like a bitch. So Tormund has a good point. Uh, it would only make their pain worse. So try to take it like a man. Spread your wings and soar. Uh, you know, pull an Orel. But I digress. I did uh, like this scene and just thought it really showed Tormund's like for John and the bond that Egret and John had, because didn't she tell him right here, I'll keep your secret, don't have to worry.
Mm-hmm.
And she's seemingly known the whole time because she can read people. And, John is really shocked by this, but I think this makes him fall in love with her even more for accepting who he is. Pretty beautiful, huh?
Yeah, she really does love him because she also says you and me is what matters to me and you, and she says one of her lines of never betray me, um, or she says, and then she says if you do, then basically that she'll chop his penis off and wear it around her neck, which is kind of funny because she doesn't get to do that. But imagine Jon Snow as a eunuch would have been even a more damningness to his character, but also very funny at the same time. Um, yeah, and it's funny that's because there's obviously more scenes of Jon and Egret and all of them at the wall, but it's just funny how it's like the first bit of their relationship post the first hurdle, I guess you could say. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think it cuts to Arya practicing archery, right? And Angie, I wish he would have been in the show more. I really just I dig his personality, and he teaches Arya how to shoot a bow, which may be some foreshadowing in the future. Will she kill someone with a bow or something? We have possibly a weirwood bow that could come into play. Maybe. I think I'm dreaming slightly from this. Bran could have a vision that we need a weirwood arrow to kill White Viserion. It does seem like this is gonna be hard for a living dragon to kill an undead dragon. It doesn't seem like a normal mortal wound will kill White Viserion. I think to the detriment of Drogon and Rhaegal. I think, honestly, our only hope is a clutch of eggs. But going by the names, all the dragons are he dragons, not she dragons. And, it's up in the air whether dragons are asexual or not. Uh, the literature on it goes back and forth. The maesters don't agree on anything, and everything you really hear is either tales or hearsay. None of it is confirmed, so it's up for speculation, which makes it even more fun and interesting. Um, she closes, she meets Melisandre in this Ghost of High Heart type moment, which wish we would have got a Ghost of High Heart, but they kind of merged them together. Uh, Mel says she'll close three eyes forever, which seemingly there have been more, but brown, blue, and green. I feel like this could be foreshadowing for her killing Mel, but I don't. Would she still be holding on to the grudge of just them taking Gendry away if she knows Gendry's alive? Now, she could see Mel before she sees Gendry, given Gendry's still at the wall, right? I think he's still at the wall.
Yeah, there's no, because he didn't go with them to King's Landing, and there's no real thing like past the time when we see him go and run the incredible distance that he did in like 20 minutes. There's no scene of him after that, if my memory serves me correctly. Um, so I think he's still at the wall, unless he took a really slow um, uh, horse to to Winterfell, and we just didn't notice. But I think he's still at the wall.
Yeah, so we'll have some kind of adventure with what him, Tormund,
Beric.
and Barrett coming back, and goes back into um, this, which what we'll talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Mills' astonishment at Thoros, and we find out what Thoros's main goal was for even coming to Westeros, which was to convert Robert Baratheon, and instead he failed in his task miserably. But became a drunk, but it seemingly has fell into his place. R'hllor has seemingly guided him uh, here to bring Beric back, not because he believed in God, not because he believed in the prayers, because he was his friend. And I feel like we're going to have a. Everybody expects Beric to bring someone back, but does he have enough life force to do so? That would be my question. But I'll let you ramble about this for a little bit.
Yeah, Arya, when she's learning how to use a bow, it's kind of sort of like she maybe forgot how to use it, because we know she was so good at archery in that first scene. In that first scene in Winterfell. So the fact that he has to be like, remember, you have to shoot like pretty much instantaneously after you have it loaded. You can't just wait. And yeah, they're just sitting with Thoros Amir and the Brotherhood, and you're just like, okay, this is another scene where Arya's learning something. Like you said, she may have to use a bow and arrow, which will be kind of an interesting tidbit if they bring it back up, because she was so good in the beginning with the bow and arrow. But I feel like, because imagine Arya now having bow and arrow, she has catapult, dagger, and needle all like on her person, would just be like the craziest
The perfect rogue
thing ever. And yes, the perfect rogue. And even Thoros talks about how the fact that his mission from the Red God was to turn King Robert away from his idols and turn him towards the Red God, or the Lord of Light. You can kind of see like what Thoros is doing here, like we discussed in the last bit. Um, Thoros is now the second character that we know that's from Mir, besides Varys, and it's kind of cool that these two get to speak in Valyrian, because they're really the only two characters that have spoken High Valyrian outside of Dany and her storyline. Um, and it's just kind of awesome. And then when Mel meets Beric, it's like this huge thing for her, because she's so confused, and she thinks that no one has this power, and that when Thoros says, I just said the words that I knew and it just happened, Mel does the same thing with John. In season 6, she just says any words that she remembers,
A
can
lot of
remember.
people think Davos's energy was behind that.
Mm-hmm.
He was
Possibly.
possibly the only one that believed him and Ghost, but yeah, she does bring him back. That begs the question: everything that's going to happen with Melisandre later.
Yeah, like for Thoros, I think it's like he just said the words that he knew, prayed a little bit, and then it happened. Mel said, I guess, the words that she kind of figured would work, prayed about it a little bit, and it worked. So it's that thing of taking a chance, I guess, with sort of this religion. Like, you have to just do it to see results, I guess, because everybody else just follows it, not blindly, but they follow it because that's ingrained in them, is to follow this religion. The Lord of Light and the Red God is a pretty new religion to the people of Westeros. Um, so to have Arya as a named character really go and experience two people now who know the Lord of Light is quite awesome. And who knows, they may have to bring in the Lord of Light and the Red God in season 8, but who knows?
Could be a way to invoke him at some point, and that is what becomes Azor Ahai, or Lightbringer, so to speak. Maybe a one-time thing. But how the hell would we figure that out unless Bran shows us in his Google mind?
Yeah, yeah, who knows? Well, because Beric did talk to John about the Lord of Light, and that the Lord of Light picks and chooses who come back and such in season 7, and that you're alive for a reason, and that they fulfill, I guess, sometimes good things when they come back. Like Beric for all intents and purposes, his character isn't like obviously as set up in terms of going very high, like John's character, but he's meant to do something good in this world. Same thing with like Beric. Beric was brought back so that Thoros was alive and stayed alive because Beric needed somebody to help him achieve whatever goal. So in season 7, I don't feel like we're going to come back and see that Beric has now died because of the white attack. There's something that Beric is responsible for or is part of that also John's also connected to um, aid to aid in the experience of the Red God and slash that transition forward, or he is the one that ultimately gives the kiss of life to someone because that is important in the books. And who knows, maybe it's enough in a sacrifice because that's what Beric, I think that's what Beric does for Catelyn to turn into Lady Stoneheart. So it's maybe it's someone that we don't know, that we don't expect. Maybe it's not John or Danny. It's someone who else is, who maybe the Lord speaks to Beric and says this person is important. Who knows? I'm rambling at this point, as always.
There could be something in the flames that he sees. We have. I don't know who else would really follow the Red God besides that's still alive besides Mel and Beric. I'm trying to think of anyone. The only one that may be malleable enough to try the prayer just because John is his friend would be Sam, I think. Just out of sheer desperation, the same way Thoros did. If Sam knows that this works and has access to the actual words, I believe he would try to do it to bring John back in the end, and we have him waking up again, kind of in the end with the sun beaming on him, like we see later when they get to the top of the wall. But it may be a little too fairy tale-ish of an ending. But he could wake up to hell for the most part, to a scattered and shattered nation that needs to be rebuilt. And he may reluctantly have to rebuild it. We see that as a common theme with John.
That actually, like the fact if we have to have a Thoros Beric situation, it could work in terms of a not necessarily a next generation, but like a next generation where it could be either just Davos, because Davos was the first person to abdicate for John to come back in the show, at least. But then there's also Sam, who can maybe continue that, and if Mel is to die, for sake of argument, which a lot of people think she will, I don't know, maybe, who knows, that it could be Davos that maybe explores the Lord of Light because of how sort of interconnected he was in the early seasons to Mel and to the Red God, even though he kind of opposed it in season 2, like we talked about. It could be brought back because he's like, this is in episode 6 when, or season 6 episode 1, he's like, have you ever tried it? Or in episode 2, sorry, have you ever tried it, and have you ever like done the magic or said the words? So it could be a thing where Davos maybe gets that, like, or Sam, and just Sam just brings him the book of or Valor, and
Davos watched very intently while she was doing it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, he was because it could be a thing where it's like a double team situation, because technically John credits most of his life and his survival to Sam and to Davos, almost in a sense. So it could be a thing of a double team situation. But who knows? We're going tinfoil on this, but I really enjoy it. And who knows? Anything's a
I
possibility.
could see a crazy scrambling scenario where the Onion Knight and Sam Slayer save John, scramble. Oh, we got to do this. This is the only thing I can think of, but that would be the same kind of thing. I don't know if they would do it over again. If they did, it'd have to be completely different. And I don't think anyone's expecting that. So I could see it as a shock. Everybody thinks John's dead, but then we have this dark room. You hear these words being said, and then it pans, and you realize it's Sam and Davos trying to bring him back. That would be really cool. Um, yeah, maybe we stumbled onto something. Maybe we're crazy. Don't matter though.
Who knows? Or it could be a thing where they may try it, maybe not on John, but they maybe try it on, say, Danny, for example, and it doesn't work. Like, she's not the one who's, I guess, wanted by the Lord of Light. Like, the Lord of Light maybe, even though Melisandre says, or in Kinvara, kind of not flock, but they kind of go near Danny. Maybe the Lord of Light's like, no, and they want John instead. Who knows? There may be a thing of, because they've already had that scene with him, they may not have it again, or that. But see, we're rambling. But who knows? Like you said, we may have stumbled onto something.
Yeah. Get on to the little. We just have the little scene with them climbing the wall, right? We don't see anything there yet. Not a lot to touch on. I think you can show it real quick. Just really intense.
Yeah.
Shows you the gravity of what they're doing.
Yeah, it's just that forgot that now Gendry goes with Mel in the end. He's now been given to Mel for gold.
Yeah.
To give him.
I rambled about that a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
It was a while ago.
Sorry.
Yeah, she's. I think that's what I mean. Like, I don't know. Will Arya see Gendry or Mel first? And does she still hold it against Mel? She probably thinks Gendry is dead as soon as she sees her. I don't think she's just gonna go crazy and kill her, but I think there could be. Definitely, Arya's gonna spy on her if they're in the vicinity of one another. But
yeah.
If we're going along with what we're thinking, I think Arya's gonna head to King's Landing as soon as she can. If she finds out the plan with the search, if she finds out the search is not gonna hold to her word. But I don't know. As far as the wall, yeah, we get to see it there. It's a really good shot. And I can't tell if it's weeping slightly, but I think it was in the books when they were climbing, and that's why it was a little unstable. I know he saw a few people fall before they even started to go up, and then have them having to climb. Could you imagine having to climb that? I don't know. I could do it.
No, I'm afraid of heights.
We can cut to the brooch if you want.
Yeah, it's just them climbing, and then the one thing is Egret's sassy remark of, "Are you looking at my ass, Jon Snow?" And he's just smiling. It's kind of the fact that now they're more or less open with their relationship, even though last scene we have with them, Jon's like, "Shh." Which is kind of funny. It's just like they've kind of gotten more open with their relationship. But yeah, that was my one little quick thing, is that she's like, "Are you looking at my butt, Jon Snow?" And he's just like smiling like a little schoolboy.
He probably was.
Because they're just funny. But yeah, they climb the wall, and they almost fall because Orell wants to kill both Jon and Ygritte in the end, but they both save, or Jon saves them both, and then they continue to climb up. But then there's these two, being Theon and Ramsay, and Ramsay kind of
Wake up, Reek.
he kind of tortures them a little bit by asking them where they are, and if he gets it wrong, that he'll take the bones from his finger, his pinky finger. And
yeah, is it? We see how much Ramsay loves torture right here. Love the crazy eyes. Ian Rowan, is that how it's pronounced?
you and Rowan,
You
I
and
think
you and Rowan.
something like that. It's
really good at these parts. I haven't seen him play. I think he's just really good at these parts. We'll see how much he can expand, but I loved him as Ramsay. He portrayed him perfectly. It doesn't visually exactly look like him in the books, but the character um, performance is flawless to me. We know our good friend Ben Hogan loves Ramsey, named his kid after him. Um, yeah, like this scene is like basically Theon is Ramsey's gimp, his sexual play toy. You know, Ramsey has to get a lot of satisfaction out of this. He doesn't do it because he has to. It's something that really gets him off in a deep way. And they got hashtag finger time. And this is one of those famous lines. If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention. And I believe that, goes into the whole Game of Thrones. I think it's going to be bittersweet, and we're going to have a semi happy ending. George, and if you haven't watched Night Flyers, yet the endings are usually insane, obscure, and left up to interpretation, which I love because it makes you think. And I believe they're going to go this route. But we see the creation of Reek here. And, the fact that he just lets him think he's freaking Carhold. I can't remember his name now at this point. Oh, Torrin Karstark, my bad. And think he's in Carhold. Make him think he's won to stop the torture, and then, oh, I'm a liar. And he just goes, he strips all the skin off his pinky finger and just exposes the bone. I don't know if he takes the bone off later or not. I know in the books, Theon is lacking a couple fingers. In the show, he ends up lacking a few as well. So you'd probably have to amputate at that point. Yeah, I'm done rambling about this crazy sex scene. More sex scenes to come.
Yeah, Theon is getting pretty much very tortured, and you can see this almost less sadism. Is it sadism? That's just like want to just come out in Ramsey, because we obviously know the backstory of Ramsey's conception, and how that may maybe potentially influenced who he is as a person. But also having your father be Roose Bolton is maybe a little bit more traumatic in such, but he's doing what the Boltons do best, is to have them flayed and then killed, but he obviously doesn't kill Theon. But it gets there eventually. He metaphorically kills Theon, which is kind of sad, but a lot of people think that this is kind of a redemption for basically killing the Stark boys. But I digress, because there's more of these scenes, and this was this relatively quick scene in the grand scheme of things. But it we still don't have the identity reveal yet of who Ramsey is at this point still, so it's kind of funny to be like, who is he really, and such.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you hadn't read the books, you have no idea who this crazy MFer is. If you paid attention to the show really closely, you might have picked up on it. My bastard in the north. Take care of it. Old Bolton, beady eyes himself. We'll see him later in the episode. Just handing it to Jamie and Brienne, but I digress. You know what? Really good torture. Not saying it like I like it, but it portrays the pain and agony fantastic. It's hard to watch. It's so brutally realistic, and just the dead eyes right there. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to torture you to death, Rick. You're going to beg me to kill you. It's not happening.
Yeah, and like we've probably talked about on other episode clubs, Theon Alfie Allen was cast because of his audition with not only just Theon, but how he would portray Reek in the future. Like, that's pretty much how he was secured into this role, because they not only had to cast him on how he would just play Theon, but how for majority of his character arc play Reek in the after effects of Reek. And I think David and Dan and the rest of the casting picked a really good person to betray this, because I don't think many actors can go from like a rightfully minded person to a person who completely loses everything in their mental state and then slowly come back.
Oh, he has some serious range. Alfie Allen is super duper talented, and he's a pretty funny dude in real life. um, yeah, I don't know if I want to talk anymore about torture. No, I'm just kidding.
You know,
I think we covered it pretty good. There's a lot to break down later, though, so it would be good to.
yeah, coming.
Oof,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh. So if I go
Oh,
back,
we got the ferret twins.
yeah. So,
Blackwalder Rivers and Lothar Frey. Lothar.
mm-hmm.
Is that right? Sorry.
Yeah, Black Wilder and Luther and Rob and company meet to discuss terms of an alliance, even though Rob has broken it, and we can most definitely talk about him in this scene. And they basically talk about how they need to secure an alliance and that someone is going to marry Rosalind Frey, and whoever it is must do it quickly because they need it with the marriage within a fortnight. Uh, so these next couple episodes come very quickly, and that Edmure initially says no, but Rob kind of throws a slight hissy fit, and Edmure eventually agrees. So, what do you think about this this scene here?
Well, Rob does have some balls to just sit there and just act like his dismissal of Rosalind Frey and Walter Frey in general is just gonna go unchecked. Uh, his naivety here is really odd. The whole council's naivety is odd. I feel like they're scrambling to try to figure something out to do that would possibly make them happy. But I wish they would have counseled against it. Still, you have Kat sitting here. I understand Rob wanting Edmure to make up for the stone mill debacle, which he ruined the mountain, the trap that Rob had set for the mountain and his men. But Rob even says, you shouldn't have to be punished for my sins here. So he knows he's doing wrong. He just doesn't give a shit. He thinks he's above it in a sense. I wouldn't say his ego has gotten to him, but I just think his perspective is off and he doesn't understand the gravity of his situation. And that's super well portrayed here. The Blackfish's fist compels Edmure to not have to count Rosalind's teeth before they marry. So, and if you've seen the episode, you'll get what I'm talking about. And it's just a nice, funny quip thrown in there. Fantastic touch. But in general, it's just this slow demise of Rob that is hard to watch because you can see it on Luthor and Blackwater's face that they're not happy, not gonna be pleased. It's like they're just doing this to get it over with. Even seems like they have a mocking tone when they're talking.
Yeah. Yeah, like this entire scene, I'm just like rewatching it now because I haven't watched this episode in a long time. You can really see how Rob put his uncle up to this whole decision. Like, yes, Edmure hasn't been married yet. Yes, he's probably in his 40s at this point. That there's a reason to why because he says Walter Frey wanted me to be married to one of his daughters since I was 12 years old. And he doesn't want it to happen, but because of Rob thinking with the other head decided to marry Talissa, and he's basically trying to get to scoot his responsibilities to his uncle when he actually should have done the right thing in the first place and marry her, because we all know we've only seen the not the most, what would you say, conventionally attractive women that represent the Frey women in the show.
You can't expect too much with Walter Frey's looks. But yeah, I mean, there were some okay ones, but
No,
it is exacerbated in the show. And I do like that about the show too. Most people aren't good looking in real life. I mean, everybody looks different. Beauty is relative to the eye of the beholder. And I do have to say that about the show. They use a diverse amount of people, women, men, different body types, and they kind of revel in that. I had to applaud them for that in this series. I think it's very well done because everybody's an individual. Everybody's different. There isn't this status quo in Westeros to stay on, be thin and get on a Hollywood diet. Everyone's just trying to survive, and they reflect that. Some of these shows, every fucking character in the show is beautiful, and it's like, what? Man, these people should have like the bloody flux, some pox. You got clubfoot here. It has a clubfoot. And they don't put a lot of makeup on the actors, and it really shows their age line. I mean, all of that, those little things that would make it gritty and grimy and real. It feels like you're there. I'd say they slightly get away from it in the later seasons, but I still love the show.
Well, if speaking of gritty and grimeness, Sophie Turner was told, I think not last season, but a couple seasons before, maybe her season 5-ish characters going into season 6, to not wash her hair very much, because they wanted it to be representative of what her hair would have probably looked like with not having baths every single day, every few days. The natural grease in your hair and how to make it look realistic as possible, up until obviously she wears a wig, where they probably styled it with some sort of gel to make it look like that way, but they went into that much detail with people to make sure that their hair was authentic looking as possible. So I get that. And yeah, in this, we really do see that maybe the Freys know what they want to do, because Tywin was sending ravens in the last episode. So maybe it's just to make a treaty to Walder Frey and his sons. Okay, well, just give them about 14 more days, 15 more days to live, and see what they come up with in that time period. And
yeah, it's just so simple. Quick fix, huh?
Because the Red Wedding is coming, and whoever decides to marry who, keep them alive, and if not, who knows. Yeah, Rob really messed up when he decided to marry Talissa. Imagine how different the story would have been if he'd said no to marrying Talissa and to yes to Rosalind Frey. How different / how maybe boring Rob's storyline could have been. But again, I digress because we'll never know.
Yeah.
The next scene that we have here.
Oh, yeah, Roose is toying with Jamie and Brienne. Oh, poor Jamie. You still keep kind of feeling for him at this moment. There you go, struggling with cutting that pork loin. I'm not sure exactly. Don't quote me on that, but he was struggling. You see Brienne there helping him out. Just shows their closeness. It shows that bond. It kind of reinforces what we've seen these past couple of episodes with Brienne and Jamie forging this friendship together. And Roose is just reveling in torturing Jamie. Uh, his cards. He says he may or may not. He doesn't, you know, want to upset Tywin Lannister, so he's gonna let us. If I'm not mistaken, he's gonna let him go because he had his hand chopped off. If I'm not mistaken. Now, he could have
What?
just been letting him go because he's Tywin, but I think he said the excuse that is because he was basically had a sword hand chopped off, and he didn't want Tywin thinking he did that. And this leads you to right here. You're sitting, if you're paying attention, you're like, well, why is Roose Bolton letting Jaime Lannister go, not telling Robb what's going on here? And it's right after the scene with Robb. It's set up perfectly, and it completely shows his downfall, but also shows Jaime's love for Brienne right here. The look on his face when he finds out that Brienne isn't going with him is a look of terror, a look of the only time I've seen that look of from him is having to do with Cersei. Other than that, he doesn't have that look of fear or foreboding on his face. And that's all I will ramble about for now. Go ahead, Sasa.
Yeah, in this you can really see now the complete potential separation between the Boltons and the Starks, and technically the Tullys at this point, because there was no Raven sent that Jaime is now in Roose Bolton's care. There's even a scene where they both help each other out in this. Jaime with when he's trying to cut, I'm guessing it's tenderloin or a pork chop, and Brienne just helps him with it. And then there's a scene where Bruce is talking about her not being able to go, and he reaches over with his one hand that he has left and stops her from taking the knife and probably wanting to stab Bruce Bolton in the neck. Like, they're both very caring about one another, and they both really want to establish a relationship that's based on caring, and it's a true friendship. And obviously in the next episode with the Bear and the Maidenfair, we see how much already their relationship has developed and blossomed, because yes, we kind of get their relationship at the end of season 2 and into season 3, but we've kind of had it carry on for majority of season 3, and it's really a good one, and it carries on into season 4 when Jaime tasks Bran in protecting Sansa and the Stark girls after the Red Wedding happens in a couple episodes from now. So their relationship is very strong for two people who in the beginning had opposing thoughts on one another. And yeah, Roose Bolton, he's a crazy person, but you kind of have to like him in a sense because of how crazy and creepy he plays this character. And my gosh, like the fact that they also talk about Tywin and how pretty much Tywin would pay anything for Jaime to come back, and yet he hasn't done anything to try and find him. But there's also that whole thing with the letters. Like, who was Tywin writing the letters to? Was it Roose, and they're just like giving this stupid waiting period? Maybe even
If
Tywin was testing.
Bruce was sending them through Talissa
Mm-hmm.
as to not have any suspicion be drawn, if these are Talissa's letters, he's gonna let them go right out like Rob always did. So that would make sense. But does she have to be a spy? No, but I feel like she just acts like one. Either way, I just had to throw that in there.
No, yeah, it's fun to speculate about the wife Rob chose instead of the one that was supposedly given to him, and her relationships potentially with other characters. Yeah, it's just funny, but yeah, this scene sets up the next episode with Bear and the Maidenfair, and yeah, it's my weird thought, but it's kind of like a mundane scene, but it's a lot of just dialogue. It's a very dialogue, foreshadowing-ish um, scene in this episode. Anything
Yeah.
else? Sorry. Roose and his beady eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Greyjoys here. This famous line.
Greyjoys are treasonous halls. Yeah, gotta love Bruce. I agree with you on that. Um, yeah, if you want, Cersei's too old, right?
Yeah, so if I do my little scoochy
All
scooch
black and
with
brown and covered with pewter.
this
The bear,
little,
the
I
bear,
should
and
have,
the maiden fair.
now that I'm
Roose
realizing,
Bolton has no hair.
now that I'm realizing it, I could have used the other website that I have for this.
Mm-hmm.
Damn it, I just forgot.
It's all good. It doesn't matter really.
Mhm,
We'll work through it.
mhm.
Ta-da! Yeah, so I'll set it up for you and let you talk a little bit like this. Elena basically, Cersei's too old. She wants some children for Loras. Tywin threatens to put Loras in the King's Guard. She asked Tywin if he ever messed around with his cousins. Let him know that it's natural for boys to tumble between the sheets when they're young. And Tywin just is firm. No, no. You can tell Tywin's so uncomfortable with this conversation. I think that's her whole point. She knows what Loras is. Everyone knows what Loras is. He can still have children, though. And they're playing the Game of Thrones, but Tywin has this. I'm going to put him in the King's Guard. He has the last say here. Olenna has no power like that she can use, so she's kind of at a disadvantage. But she's still working on things. What do you think about that scene? Mackenzie L. Burns.
Yeah, you can really see how kind of the grandparents roll with the punches in terms of what their grandchildren and their children, I guess more in Taiwan sense, do in their spare time, or what would do in their spare time. And yeah, the when Taiwan's like, I wouldn't, my stomach turns with the details of your grandson's nocturnal activities, even though my stomach remains quite strong. Um, it the way that these two actors really bounce off one another, and this is just phenomenal. Olenna, great actress by herself, especially with the younger generation. Charles Dance, phenomenal actor by himself, and with the other actors in this series. It's just awesome, and to have these two kind of clash, it is just really funny. And the fact that Alana doesn't deny the fact of her grandson's sexuality is just awesome and very progressive of her. And Alana is probably one of the more
He's a
progressive.
sword swallower. What of it?
Yeah, like she's very progressive, and she doesn't actually give two shits about what her grandson does and if it benefits her family or not. And when they talk about how what like the fact of he says, what if the rumors about my children are true, and what if Jamie and Cersei are the parents of Tom and Marcella and Joffrey? What does that do to our alliance with one another? It's throwing the prized rose into the dirt. And uh, it's that question of what would have happened if the revelation had come to pass about Joffrey, um, if he hadn't died at the purple wedding and such. And um, same thing with Tom, and if that whole secret hadn't been divulged, how Olenna and the Tyrells really have been affected. And the same thing with Loras. Pretty much it
I'll tell
was
you straight up.
good.
I'm pretty sure Marjorie would have had grounds for divorce. She would be queen. Um, they would probably not want to be with child at that point. Depending on whether or not she's with child, is whether or not I think they would go with it. I think if it does come out, you would have hysteria with Joffrey and Cersei. Even Tywin would go crazy to defend it. He's not going to stop. Even if he finds out it's true, he's going to spread as much propaganda as he can in order for people to not believe it. That it just stay rumors like it is. It's it's a rumor that everyone believes, but it's still a rumor at this point. And you do make a good point with that. I think if they would have found out, it would have been a bunch of ammunition used for blackmail. And, Marjorie would have been made queen. I'm sure Loris would have been raised up to a position on the council for sure, maybe even a high position. And yeah, he could have got to marry anyone of his choosing. Cersei wouldn't be good, but Sansa is key to the north. I think they would have still tried to, had everything worked out, even if Sansa had escaped, if the poison didn't happen, they still would have tried to make an alliance with her. And Sansa, I believe, would have made an alliance with him. I think she would have, just for straight up political reasons at this point, because she has become that smart and that adaptable to many different situations. That's the beauty of Sansa's tragic storyline. Same thing with Arya, just two different skill sets completely.
Yeah,
Is that a good enough answer? It's only like a 5-minute rant.
No, it's very true on what most definitely could have happened, and then it's just that begs the question. Then, so say this happens in the middle of season 4, who technically is the most eligible bachelor ish to then marry Marjorie, and then I guess then the royal household, because we have
what's his name? Doran's son. What's Doran's son? Tristan Martell.
Yeah.
To bring Doran into the realm would have been a possible good candidate for Marjorie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would they have did that? No. I think they may go a more traditional route. You can't go with a Stormlander because there's no one of note still alive, even though it's impossible for there not to be. They just can't address it because the show's so big, the world's so vast. You could,
They could have.
I would say John, but no. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't know about his heritage. You could say you'd have to think something that would unite, right? What do you think?
They'd kind of have to bring in maybe a new character, or raise up a character from some other household, maybe.
Whoever it would be basically a figurehead.
Mm-hmm.
They would want a figurehead. They would want Marjorie in control. Marjorie would want to have control. Atlanta would want to make sure Marjorie was in control before she passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd have to be someone that they can manipulate.
Yeah, it would be
Maybe even Robin Aaron.
Mm-hmm. Someone of a well, because there's that whole thing of someone of a lesser house being involved with the throne, I guess.
Yeah, they could up jump many people.
Because then they could bring in
they could have bring in Miranda. I don't know. We're ranting about some weird stuff. I think we
hypothetical
got some good stuff from it though.
a hypothetical situation. Who knows? Watch, we do a stream on the most hypothetical situations possible in the future. Yeah, this scene is just awesome in the fact that when he starts writing up, should I draw up the order? And then this is my last thing of, should I draw up the order? And she stands up and she gets the pen or the feather and she breaks it in half and it's like, like, look at me go. Grandma to the rescue kind of situation. Like, Helena is just perfect on this.
I agree.
The pen breaking. And it's like grandparent against grandparent. Which one is the more sassy of the two?
Well, it was rude of Tomlin to be writing while he was talking. She was talking to him. Anyway, so.
Yeah, and there's the whole thing of him wanting to get her more drunk, and she's like, "Nah, fam, not today." Because there we go. There's where she snaps the feather in half. And look, we're back at the wall.
John and Egret almost die, right?
But that was in the last part where they.
Was it in the last part?
Yeah, it's when Aurel tries to.
I got that right here. I don't know.
Oh no! Yes, maybe. I'm mixing them all together. Sorry. Yes, you're right. Yeah. Yes. So the climbing party continues on the wall. We lose a few men. John and Egret fight the fall and win. Yeah. So yeah, they climb the wall, and I think when they were filming this, the wall that they made in the studio was only about 15 to 20 feet high. Obviously, because you can't have a 700-foot high wall, because that does not exist in real life. Maybe it does somewhere. We just don't know about it yet. But imagine trying to film this with all of the fake snow and all of that. That'd be crazy. Yeah, they do lose a few wildlings during this. No,
Yeah.
a bunch of red shirts, but still. What did you think about this quick scene here?
Honestly, my very quick thoughts on this is that they almost die. They get pulled closer again by a near-death experience, which only brings you closer. We see that Tormund cares for both of them. He doesn't want Aurel to cut the rope, but Aurel cuts it anyway. Now, Aurel doesn't like John. He does like Egret. Aurel didn't cut the rope because he doesn't like them. He cut the rope to save his own life. Especially in the books, it works out a little differently, but it's portrayed a little bit more here to accentuate Tormund's affection toward a little bit toward John, and I use that term loosely, but he respects John for who he is, and I think this accentuates that. You needed a little dramatic moment of them almost losing their life. What is a good episode without someone almost dying, or someone dying in general? And yeah, the red shirts didn't make it, but good thing Jon Snow wasn't looking at her ass. He was able to catch her. So I just thought it was a really good, quick scene. That very intense moment.
Yeah, yeah, because you're like, oh no, because it's a thing of anybody can die at any point in time. Yeah, it most definitely brings them together, and you can almost see if they had panned up to Aurel, he goes like, oh damn it, like a thing of my plan didn't work. But yeah, they just kind of after a moment just continue on, and that's what you got to do. You can't just stand on the ledge of the wall forever. But it just got to make Aurel look like a bad guy and continue to look like a bad guy um, for a bit still anyway.
Yeah, it's a good metaphor as well for just not giving up, and you got to move past all your problems. They're in the past. You've got to deal with them and move forward. There's nothing you can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
Nice brooch.
Yeah, there goes the back to Sansa. Um, yeah, Sansa and Loras compare the difference between what is a brooch and what's a pin. And they basically talk about their wedding. That's never gonna happen. Um,
One, this is super awkward. Two, Loris already has her wedding dress stylized, planned out. I'm sure he has a sketch already. He down to the detail he described it. This man's been thinking about his wedding since he was 10 years old and having this perfect dream wedding. You can equate Loris to the male Sansa. He has these same wonderless visions. He has these delusions of grandeur, of this perfect knighthood. Yeah, sure, he's not into females, but that has nothing to do with this. He just still lives slightly in a bubble, and he's airheaded. Like all Tyrell men seem to be freaking airheaded. I just even in the books, Fire and Blood, they're dolts. The only reason that one Tyrell was a master of coin was because his wife was a great apple counter. Not really. She did a great job raising the Tyrell's funds back. I think she increased their funds by a third. They called her the Alpha Counter, though. I believe she was a fossil girl, but I can't remember her first name. Either way, it's still funny because I think he mimics Sansa perfectly right here. At least their stages of where they're at. I mean, look at her eyes, and look how he's staring off, daydreaming about his own freaking wedding. It's slightly nauseating, but also hilarious at the same time.
Yeah, like that is actually a perfect analogy for those two. Is that they're both kind of the same person um, in terms of thinking and imagining what they want, and then the reality of not getting what they want is kind of hilarious. Um, and yeah, the fact that he's like my dream wedding, and then he had to stop. He stopped, and then he said, and also the bride as well, like to cover his butt for her. Because at this point they still think that they're going to be engaged because of the plan. But this scene quickly transitions to Cersei and Tyrion spying on who will be who are supposed to be um, their future bride and supposedly future groom. And the two of them talk about this and what this alliance is um, for one another, and how
Yeah, like you
things
were
are going
saying before, how much you like this scene. You forgot about the one line from Tyrion. I'll let you say it though. But
to. I write it down.
you see, uh, it's a good scene showing two a brother and sisters coming together in times of stress. They come together slightly, and Tyrion learns that Joffrey was the one that wanted him killed. Talks about how stupid he is, that he should have poisoned him. So we get a little bit of foreshadowing for the purple wedding here.
Mm-hmm.
And the Joffrey like man and more thing, just so dumb. And then you get Cersei's complete jealousy here of Marjorie, calling her the doe-eyed whore, which is just hilarious. Hearing how she has such contempt for Marjorie. She's just perfect. The same way she did with Sandra. You're just perfect, aren't you? Um, and you know, Tyrion still wants credit for saving King's Landing. Maybe without Tyrion, it would not have happened. So he does have a good point there. He just wants a little recognition that he's part of the family, and that's my whole rant.
Yeah, like I didn't write it down. Dang it! But they do talk about like how it'd be easier, pretty much, to just to kill the two of them in the end. And Tyrion's like, no, that's maybe not the smartest thing to do. But Tyrion brings up that he is Cersei's family, and you have to protect the family, and that pretty much without him, Stannis would pretty much rule. And Cersei says, without him, Stannis would rule the city, and that yeah, the poisoning and the killing and Tywin, and how pretty much what would happen if Jaime comes and Tyrion is uh, comes and Loras is by Cersei's side, and so on and so forth. Like this is just a funny scene between siblings because we know their relationship dynamic, and um, who knows what has probably been sowed the seeds in season 7, because we do have a off-screen conversation between these two. What it sets up in the future, I don't know. Maybe it's a thing we may see through Bran, if it's maybe slightly treasonous on Tyrion's part. What is suggested and said within that meeting between those two. Who knows? But it's kind of funny how they're spying on their two bees, and
That's a good point. Good point. They're coming together in times of stress, and he does not like what he saw happen with Danny. I think it was super accentuated, the fear for his brother, and he saw his brother almost die by dragon fire. I think that affected him greatly. And if he thinks Cersei is pregnant, it's family, man. I
Yeah.
mean, you can hate him if you want, but he's trying to come from a good place here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he says, I'm your family. It's one of those lines where he says, I'm your family, and I'll do anything to protect my family, pretty much. So if he has to portray his queen, like Tyrion has to named Hand of the King, Hand of the Queen, sorry. So if he has to portray the queen, his queen, to protect his family, ooh, I don't know if Dany will like that, but especially because it's technically her arch rival. Um, at this point, it would just be a thing to shock the system, especially um, people who love and dote on Tyrion, to side with Cersei, his sister, that everyone besides BBM, shout out to Phantom DC, really loves and adores. Um, yeah, that would just be like a crazy thing where they have like a scene potentially like this. And there's an infiltration of such. Uh, but yeah, these two are kind of crazy because they also question too, where is Jamie and what Jamie would be doing if he's here. Um, yeah, because you do see how these two actors really bond over having their other sibling not there, and it's kind of funny.
I could see something like that. I could see the fact that him looking at John in that manner is him knowing he has to betray Danny, and John may be a victim, innocent bystander in this. So that could explain the look as well. It's a good point.
Yeah. And
Oh,
in
well,
this,
yeah, Tyrion also has to give him the bad news, huh?
mm-hmm. And in this, yeah. So set after this, because basically Tyrion has to tell his bride to be that they're going to be um, in this. If I can get to it. Um,
Oh, you will get to it. It's really funny because Shay's stuck in the room as well, and the pain on Peter Dinklage's face is palpable. I uh, I love this scene. I love the slap to the face that it gives to Shay as well. Even though I do like Shay with Sansa, her in general, I loathe.
mhm,
Um, just the character, not the person. And sometimes we wish we'd have heard things under different circumstances. Shay don't want to leave the room. She knows it's something big, and it almost begs the question: does she know what the hell Tyrion's gonna say? As well, it seems by her reaction that she didn't know, but why else would she stay unless she thinks he's gonna do something with Sansa out of sheer jealousy, right? I
mhm.
can't think of any other reason she would insist to stay.
Yeah, it's poor Tyrion. He has to now deal with two women instead of one, and telling them probably the most horrible news that they'll hear. Uh, and it's funny how before this dance is talking about her wedding dress and how what it's going to look like when she marries Loras, and how um, the dress that she's going to wear to Tyrion's wedding, to Joffrey's wedding, and how that there's better dressmakers in Highgarden and all that stuff. Uh, yeah, it's funny because then her hopes and dreams are crushed uh, when she finds out that she has to marry to Tyrion, and we don't see obviously her reaction to it, besides a scene afterward in the middle of Varys and Baelish having a conversation, but it can probably just be it's just a shock to the system for her because not only was she promised to marry Joffrey, but now she has to marry her beloved Joffrey's uncle, and it's a shock to the system. But it would
Well,
have
once
been.
again, all her hopes and dreams are crushed, and she's just shattered again.
Mhm.
Stupid girl. I'm a stupid, stupid girl.
Yeah,
She's just not.
I
She's
think
not stupid. This is just a
mm-hmm,
cruel, cruel world, and she's a sweet person.
mm-hmm,
She's a little ruthless now, though.
mm-hmm. But that could be just her cover. Is that she just says she's a stupid little girl with stupid dreams who never learns. It could be her cover, into.
In the book, she does use that a little more as a cover because you can get in her mind more, and it makes you understand Sansa's thought process because she does play around with Joffrey as far as what she says, even more in the books than she does in the show.
Mhm.
Um, Throws little quips out there all the time at him, things that are carefully calculated, which I think.
Yeah, it's, it's something that's really yeah. But imagine if Sansa had went to Highgarden. That's a question we can pose to everybody. Like, what would have happened to Sansa if she went to Highgarden? How would she have as revealing clothes as Marjorie does? Who knows? Is that how just the fact that that Marjorie does look the way that she does? Who knows? It would have been funny to see Sansa live in Highgarden. But who knows? We would have gone to explore Highgarden with that. Anyways, I'm rambling again, as always. The last or second to last scene that we get in this episode is Varys and Baelish having a conversation about the Iron Throne. The Iron Throne, Baelish's ambitions, the special help that Varys got, and it's the realm, and that chaos is a ladder. But spliced between this is we see Roz has now died at the hands of Joffrey, and Sansa sees Baelish leave after finding out about her now engagement to Tyrion. Um, this is,
Well,
how do you say?
just I had to give Raj the treatment she deserved, and Joffrey got a fresh experience. Uh, just Littlefinger just staring at the throne like he's in love. Not in love with much of anything except Cat and Sansa, so he stares at that throne like he wants to make love to those less than 200 swords he's counted, even though he can't give us an exact number and he was supposed to be master of coin at some point. That is oddly suspicious. I know they couldn't do the throne in the show like they did in the books, but wow, what a spectacle it would have been to see 1,000 blades, this 20-foot tall throne. I don't, that's a rough estimate. I can't remember the exact dimensions of it, but it is enormous and sharp and jagged, twisted swords. I'd say it's a little cruder looking than the one we have, but the version is fairly nice. I like it. More credence to Joff being a serial killer, and you have here the perfect frenemies. They enjoy one another's games, but the main thing is they respect each other's ability to play the game of Thrones. And I wouldn't say that Varys or Littlefinger love the other one, but they have an admiration for them. Something that they see a little bit of themselves in each, and Littlefinger really gets off here on being able to get the upper hand on Varys this time. And poor Sansa is just crushed when that ship she sees that she could have left on sails away. Spoiler alert, we may see that ship again. And poor Ross. What a sad ending to a great character.
I know, right? Like, Roz, she lasted 3 seasons though, uh, which is quite awesome that she was able to last 3 seasons on pretty much a role that was only meant for like 1 or 2 scenes. Uh, but and then Sansa seeing Baelish's ship just sail away. Uh, she's so upset by this. Like Sansa doesn't. She's only cried like this only a few times. It's this, and when I think it's after her mother and Rob have been murdered, is she really gets into her feelings and cries like this because she doesn't. I don't think she cried like that really when Ned died. So or we don't see it like that. So she's more sensitive, I guess, in these later couple episodes, and it's kind of interesting to watch back and see how her character really develops now that she's going to marry Tyrion next episode, and what she does after uh, this point, because she thinks, well, now she's lost everything, because now she has to marry Tyrion, and her one out is now gone, and who knows when she'll see him again. Probably for after her wedding, at least she thinks is when he'll show up again. It's sad to watch this unfold again, because I forgot how emotional she gets. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very well said. I can't put it better myself. Just crushed again. You know, she's a slow learner, but she learns.
The little bird is crushed. Her wings have been broken, I guess you could say. Um, and we really get the chaos is a ladder, and that it's the fall that breaks people uh, in this, and that the whole thing of the ladder is brought up, and we really get to see what Baelish is thinking in this, and it's just awesome how it's well put. Um, and chaos is the ladder, but look who's climbing in this next bit. It's Ygritte and John, and their climbing party have made it uh, to the top of the wall. And after having a deep breath, because that I can't even imagine trying to climb that, they have a cute romantic moment in the end, and it's looking at the top of the wall and seeing what the world was like from both sides. Uh, what did you think about when they like finally had gotten to the top of the wall, and what both sides of the wall like look like from that vantage point?
Well, to them, this is almost the top of the world. The end of the world is at the wall. A lot of people say in the show and books, the world ends here. Um, and I think this is a great shot of one, John getting hit with the beam of sun rays, and the eagle soaring through is kind of a resurrection hint, I think, as well as you see everything they're fighting for. And when I say everything, that's everything. You know, they can't see all of the Seven Kingdoms or whatever from there, but it gives you the aspect of what they're trying to hold on to, what is so important, and it is life. Um, and you know, just Eager's face, she's amazed by this. She's drawn to tears, and we get the smoochies, the perfect kiss. Um, and it's a really short scene. I don't know how much I can take from it other than the metaphors I've already thrown out. It's straightforward, to the point, a little bit of symbolism here and there, uh, with John's love and everything he has to fight for. And then it's just kind of there in the pictures, for me anyway. But, you know, I read into things when nothing's there.
Yeah, yeah. This, like I said, this scene is the end of the episode, but it proves that if you can accomplish anything, you can do it. And this, not to be, what is it? What's the word I'm trying to say? But like they've reached the pinnacle of their pretty much relationship, because everything that happens after pretty much this episode is the downfall of their relationship. I don't think in the episodes really coming up that there's something that big
What's the only direction you can go when you're at the top?
down. Um, so this is the sweet scene that we get from them, and it leads to the ultimate downfall of their relationship, because there's only a few more episodes. I think it's episode 9 when John ultimately leaves them, which um, crashes and burns their relationship, because he goes back to the wall in the end. Uh, so yeah, it's cute to see while it lasts, and it still gives you kind of some butterflies almost, because this is one of the relationships. I think it's the only relationship that's come out of Game of Thrones that led to a romantic one that led to a marriage. So it's sweet to see these two, and it's just crushing when you see them in 409 when she ends up dead, and they recount this special time that they had together, and that's the end of the episode, pretty much, because it's just after this it's just them together as one, and some kissy. Yeah, it's
What you want? You want my thoughts?
yes.
We were ramblers tonight. I think really solid episode. I'd give it about a 7.5. I'd say that because I love the intrigue. I love the build up for this. There's massive foreshadowing, courtly intrigue, but we have little to no action. Not much eye candy besides the wall. Rob's demise is just hard to watch, even though I do enjoy that scene. Tyrion sounds it's a devastating episode, but it's more on the dramatic side and a lot of setup. I wouldn't call it filler because everything here seemingly has a meaning, and we've talked about it for almost 2 hours because there's stuff there. It wasn't one of my favorite episodes, but it definitely isn't nowhere close to my least favorite. It's above average episode for me.
Yeah. Or no, but what's your rating out of? Like, how many blanks do you get? Or 7.5 what? Sorry.
Oh. 7 out of 10 Theon coin purses.
Nice. Yeah, this episode's a really good one. Sets up this one, like 5, sets up the back half of season 3, and yeah, we really see what's next for Rob come to pass, and what's next for all of these characters come really forward, which is awesome. My rating for this is 8 Ramsay wake up calls. And yeah, it's a good episode. Can't wait to talk about the next one, which will be tomorrow or today, depending on when I get this up, aka Wednesday, February 6th. And we'll be talking The Bear and the Maiden Fair with us and JR Rowley from Geek Chat 1. And we'll be talking about that episode. So, Johnny, if you can tell everybody where to find you and what is kind of coming up for you on your channel.
So tomorrow on Wednesday, the same day as Episode Club at 2 p.m. Eastern, J.R. Rowley will be on my channel. We'll be talking in-game theories. It's a special Geek Out with Geek Chat 1, Season 8. And we'll speculate. We'll talk about whether or not we'll ever see a trailer, why they didn't give us one. We'll yell a little bit. Saturday at sometime, I want to say 2 to 4. We'll be doing a Nooners or Fire and Blood, Chapter 12. Mackenzie, Lauren's Corner, and John St. Baptiste will be there to discuss this riveting chapter. Starts to get very close to the Dance of Dragons. Seeds have already been sown, and things are starting to play out. It's going to be intriguing. Cylon Johns and Jill's Friday night at 9 p.m. Mackenzie L. Burns is a Cylon Jill. Also, Bobby Catalano, Amy True, Clarissa Thompson, and the honorary Cylon Jill, Julianne, 89. And I can't forget my co-host, John St. Baptiste, as well. Let's see. I think that's it for now. I'm probably forgetting something, but there will be more of these podcasts coming up pretty soon as well.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing next episode being Bear and the Maiden Fair as a live episode. Second Sons, which is episode 8, will probably most likely be a podcast. Reigns of Castmere will be a live, and then after that, we don't know what we're going to do as podcasts. So I want people in the, if you've made it to this point, which I hope you have, let us know what kind of episodes you want us to do on Wednesday nights, because we're at, 68 days until the premiere of Game of Thrones season 8. So let us know what episodes you want to do podcast style. If you want us to do an episode podcast style but have somebody else join us for one, we can see if we can make that work. And with that, we will see you for episode 7. And bye, everyone.
Thank you.
See if I can close this now.
I can cut it off.